Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I'm just going to paint a pretty easy landscape. Really what I want to do here is test out the wet and wet applications of a paint that I'm going to be reviewing. And I've had some really good luck with inexpensive paint on Amazon lately, and I just thought that, I just really want to kind of see what these will do in a really wet and wet application. And I'm just going to do a simple little kind of like a sunset, sunrise type scene, and yeah, just kind of get some cloudy sky going and see what we can see. I'll put a little boat here. I have a little reference photo I'm going by from Pixabay, and I will try to remind to link it. If I forget, look up Sunrise Boat Twilight Cloudscape. That's the name of it. But hopefully I will be on the ball and I will link it up. I haven't been recording all of my paintings lately because I've been painting a lot for World Watercolor Month, and probably a little out of practice. I'll give a little slats on the boat. I'm not going to get too crazy about detail on this. In fact, I'm just using a no-name pencil. I've actually been getting the habit of collecting pencils upstairs when I see them, and they're like kind of not very sharp, because I want to make sure that I don't ruin my new electric sharpener, and I keep it nice and in good shape. So like I occasionally will sharpen a regular pencil to to keep it to keep the blades sharp, rather than just because I do a lot of colored pencils. This is Hahnemühle Cezanne cotton watercolor paper, 140 pound. It's about 6 by 9 in size, roughly. Excuse the squeaky chair. I did just, actually, Jason just WD-40'd it for me, but it still seems to have some squeak. But I think we're getting a new chair for the for our computer desk upstairs, so I might just take that one, and I'm going to put this over with a sewing machine because I don't film over there too often, so it doesn't matter if that squeaks. All right, so I'm just wetting the sky. And the reason I really wanted to do this is that I'm using the Art Wheel watercolors, and I took a chance on these on Amazon. They're 30 bucks, and there was like a $5 off coupon. I'm like, I'm going to give it a try, because just something about them looked like they might be better than other budget paints. They were in metal tubes. They were 15 ml instead of 12 or 10 ml, which is unusual. They kind of remind me of the look of some higher end Asian watercolors. So, hey, that's what I'm gonna give it a try. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna start off actually with a nice warm yellow, and I'm just gonna dab it where I want the sun to be. I will be lifting that out, but I just want to get a little bit of that in there. The colors, I let them dry down the palette. They're super saturated, which is so nice, and they're not chalky, and they dry down well. They don't crack. It's just, I'm kind of like, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what's the catch. Why are these good? Because, honestly, it doesn't seem like paints this cheap should be very good, but I've been having some really good luck. Paul Rubens has been making some amazing stuff, and Rosa has been, so, hey. Let's see, I want a red, but nothing too pinky, so I'm going to go with the Madder Red, which I honestly think is a PR177 red, although it's notated as a PR122. I think it was a typo. And the olive green, I think, is maybe not notated correctly. But other than that, I don't see any issues with any of the colors. And I'm not a scientist. I could be wrong. I could be wrong many times. Okay, I want to get some clouds. What I'm really excited about is their burnt sienna actually is PR101, which I'm usually not crazy about in a burnt sienna, but it has also PBK11, which is a very granulating black. So that's kind of interesting that that they would use that combination. So I'm mixing those colors on my palette. I should scooch this over a little bit. So I've got the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I might add a smidgen more blue and a smidgen of that red in there too. I love a granulating sky. I think it looks so nice when you have like clouds and stuff. And I might be going a little dark here, but I'm just kind of just having fun with it. I love how the color just kind of splits a part of my palette too. I mean, not everybody would like that, I'm sure, but I think it's kind of cool. Make a little bit of purple too with that red and blue. I love this palette. This I've had this palette for a while, and I'll have to look for it, see if it's on Blick, because it had a pretty hefty shipping charge on Amazon, so I'm thinking it's coming directly from the manufacturer and not like housed on Amazon, so maybe Blick has it, but it's the Royal and Langnickel. Oh, I love it. Royal and Langnickel large folding palette. I think I'm going to try some of that Cerulean Blue. The Cerulean is a mix of PB15. It says PB15 and PW6, not PB15 colon anything. So that's kind of unusual. Oh, that's super vibrant. It's way more vibrant than you would get from a Cerulean typically. So I'm going to dilute that down before it stains. And we'll get some more ultramarine in the mix. That's a little on the vibrant side, but I think we'll be able to zhuzh it in there. Ooh, I love what the colors are doing. They're very active colors. Well, not super active, but they're more active than, say, Mission Gold. As I recall, I haven't used my Mission Golds in a while, but they seem to be a lot more active than the Mission Golds in my remembering anyway. So many paints, so many paints, so much to remember. But man, I'm just loving this. Oh my gosh. So I was actually getting ready to do the review on these paints, and I'm like, you know, I feel like I want to play with them more. I'm so impressed with them. Is there a catch? Because I'm really liking these paints. Is there something wrong with them that I am not seeing? And the more I use them, the more I'm like, nope, these are awesome. I'll do a little more blue in there. What if we mix both of those blues? What do we get? I have a feeling these are going to go up in price. It's funny because the box looks like it's like a children's toy, really. The box looks so juvenile. But just looking at the tubes and looking at there's pigment information, and there's even a swatch with the pigment information on it, which is so handy. I was just like, I gotta give these a try. I'm using cotton paper, so that's gonna help me keep everything keep everything wet long enough so I can keep going in there and playing and adding color and getting these beautiful granulations. I'm also not gonna heat set this because sometimes I'll use a heat tool to help it dry quicker. And then I had an interesting comment. Somebody said some instructors say don't heat it, and so she was confused. And I said, well, there are some reasons why I don't heat it. One, if I really want to get a textured granulation, like a pretty sky with lots of color, then I won't heat it, because in order to get that granulation, you need to let the paint stand and let that pigment settle out. And that's what's going to give you that beautiful texture. The other reason you might not want to heat it is that if you use masking fluid could become permanent on your paper if you heat it. Now I just want to get a little bit of like highlight around some of the clouds here so I can add some yellowy pink colors. So I'm just very gently trying to rock some of the highlight off of the clouds that are close to the sun, or that would be kind of, the sun would be not altering, but like casting a little glow to. So that's what I'm doing here. And if you're afraid to add the yellow, if you're like, I'm going to get a green mess, Lindsay, I don't even want to do it, you don't have to. If the further away from the sun you are too, the more you can just leave it white. If you're like, oh, I want to break that up, it's too much, you can go ahead, just kind of bunch your towel up. And I do find a paper towel works better than a rag in this situation. And also make sure there's no puddles, because if you have puddles, that can give you backgrounds, which may be cute. It may look like cute clouds, but it may be a mess. So if you want to control backgrounds, you want to go in there and you want to wipe that away. I'm going to get a paper towel though, because, and then like you let that dry out and use that to clean your palette after, so it doesn't have to be like a complete like waste if you're concerned with that. You can even use your paper towels if you like to do handmade paper. You could throw them in there and use them again that way. And I know some crafters like to save their paper towels, and they'll save baby wipes and things, and they will use those for making like die cutting flowers and making some pretty embellishments. So, you know, There's always something you can do. All right, so I'm going to be very gentle when I go in and add some yellow. And in fact, I'm going to use a smaller brush so I don't get too much water. So I'm going to just go with that one. I'm going to take some yellow, same yellow, and I'm going to take a little bit of that same red, that same kind of cool red. And I am going to blot my brush. So my brush is loaded. I'm going to blot it so I don't have extra. And I'm just very gently rinsing off between colors so I don't get mud. Loading off, blotting off the extra. Going in there and just adding that little glow. You don't have to do this, guys. If that just makes you nervous, then don't do it. You don't have to do it. I would rather take one for the team if it looks like a hot mess. Well, you know that you'll be glad that you passed on it, right? But, I mean, it's not much of a risk, right? If it turns out that bad and I'm ashamed of myself, then I don't even have to post it. But I don't think that's ever happened. Now keep in mind, this is a really wet background, so you will have a little bit of shift. Oh, something else to remember. Don't have your brush really wet when you're doing this, because if your brush is really wet, you're going to end up with back runs. And chances are that's not what you want, because then you'll have all these like kind of cauliflower, they call them cauliflowers because they look like cauliflower vegetables in your sky. So you probably don't want that. I think I'm going to leave that pretty much. I'm going to wipe some of that out. That's a little bold. And I just want to let the water do its thing. The other reason you might not want to wet heat set your paper, I do know some reds can shift a little bit dull when it's heat set. Alizarin Crimson and also Madder Lake can shift a little bit. And I'm not sure exactly why that is when you heat it. It seems to me, maybe I'm just imagining it, but that's something that does seem to happen. All right, so now I'm going to start again with a yellow. And we're gonna work on the water because we have a nice buffer. You know, this band of foliage is going to keep us from having problems over there. Actually, before I do that, I am going to grab a little gray we made with the burnt sienna. Oops, that's not the right color. I just don't want it too wet because I don't want to have a blossom. Burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I want to pick it up without much water though. I'm going to blot my brush a little bit so I don't get too much water. I just want to put in this kind of far away mass of land. And I want to put it in with this kind of dull gray bluish color so that it will it'll kind of push back and be far away. Just want to give it the look of far away land. And it's going to kind of blur together, and that's what I want, because things further away are going to be less in focus. Okay, now we can go on to the water. Look at that, 13 minutes. We have all that beautiful color in there. I'm going to go underneath where the light is, where the sun is, and I'm going to kind of throw in a little bit of streaky reflections. And clean my brush. Now I'm going to grab some of the red. And I've got quite a bit of water on my brush here, so they're going to blend together, and it's going to blend in when I add some blues in there too. So right now it's too bright, but I'm going to let it mix on the paper so it will keep freshness, but then it can mellow out. It'll mellow out as it mixes with the other colors. And I do want to be aware of this boat and try not to paint into it. I didn't wet this because I do want to keep little ripples of light showing if I can. Now I'm going to mix up ultramarine and that red. And add some of that in there. Actually, you know what? I think I'll switch to a flat brush because I'm getting way too much paint and water in there. I'm going to go with this Aqualon flat. I find also using the chisel edge I can get a lot more of a realistic effect, and just the way when I'm doing water, if I use the chisel edge of a brush like this, I get a much more realistic look, realistic ripply look. Now I'm going to take some of this grayish blue color that we made. I'm going to mix it in with that purple and bring that over here more. I am digging that sky, friends. I really am. You don't have to put the boat in either if you're like, yeah, I don't know about that boat, Lindsay. If that seems like it's just too complex, or maybe you just think it takes away kind of some of the sereneness, you don't have to put that in. You could bring the water all the way to the bottom if you're not comfortable with doing land and foliage. That's still going to be a pretty picture. So I'm going to add some of the cerulean, a little more of the ultramarine into that mix and pull that in from the side because our water needs to have the sky colors reflected in it. So we do want to pull all those gorgeous colors in. Now if you want after, if you're like, oh shoot, I want to leave more highlights, you can go in with white gouache or a white pen. You can even, after it's all dry, you might even want to just go in with more of that, one of your darker mixes and throw in more ripples on the dry surface, because you're not going to have really a lot of really bright sparkle, maybe just a little bit in where the sun is, but you're not going to have tons of it. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. Be patient. It's hard not to go back in there and mess with it, but just try to be patient with that. Okay, I think I need to let this dry before I can go and do any more, but I'm really impressed and encouraged by the amount of granulation I'm getting in the sky. I think that's really pretty. So we're going to let this dry naturally. We're not going to heat it because we want to keep this granulation happening, and we'll see you back after it's dry. Okay, I've let this dry and I am loving the texture in the sky there. I think it's gorgeous. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to get some color in here, and I think I want to use, take my sticky notes off there, that's for a review. I think I want to use some of that olive green, and then maybe I'll mix some brighter green with the yellow and blue that we've already used, the cerulean, and did we use any lemon? No, we didn't use any lemon, but I'll use the other yellow. We'll see if that gives us a bright enough color. I really want to saturate this and then maybe use a sponge to get some texture. I'm going to start off with the yellow-green. I don't think I'm going to pre-wet this though, because I think that, ooh, that is really saturated. That's really saturated for just, you know, grabbing it. Grabbing it off the pan like that. I'm just going to get some texture, some shapes, kind of like a little bit of a leafy, I don't know, foliage shapes. This is a pretty fat brush. This is a number 12 round. This is a Mimic Kolinsky. I really like these brushes. They're like a faux squirrel, and they're made by Creative Mark. They are wonderful. I've been using the same ones for many years, probably about 6 years. And I haven't had to replace any, and I use them almost to every painting. So I do have a couple sets. I have the big value set, and then I have a couple of the smaller sets that came with my, a couple of my smaller sets are newer because they came with my signature sets through Jerry's Autorama. But they're just such a wonderful brush. I wonder if this is going to have granulation, because I think they misnoted the colors on this olive green, and I think it might even have some granulating properties. Like it might have some black in there. Oh, I can add some ultramarine blue to that too and get some granulation happening. I just love the texture, especially texture in a foreground. Ooh, that's extremely bold. I probably didn't need to put that much in there. Oh, I really want to get some of that under the under the boat. Then let's try mixing up that green. Let's do the, yeah, I guess we didn't use that lighter yellow. Let's do that yellow we used with a cerulean and see what we get there. Since the paint's dry, I can go in with my dirty brush. And I think, you know what? I think I'll use a sponge to apply that. So when you're using a sponge, what you want to do is you want to dip it in some water and wring it out. So it's pliable, but you do want to get the extra water out. So I'm going to wring it out really good over my rinse water. I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of the yellow first on the sponge right from the dried pan, because I have a lot of darker colors there already. Then I'm going to pick up the green. I'm going to try to get it so it's not all in the same spot in the sponge. And then I'm just going to try stamping it for some texture. It's going to lift up some of what's there and redistribute it a little bit. And hopefully give us a little bit of texture. That's pretty. That's really nice. Okay, now just usually I will wash these out in the sink. I'll rinse them under cool water and just squeeze them. So you really want to do that because it's hard to do that in your water bucket. And also, if you forget, then you could end up with some surprising results in your next painting that you use a sponge for, because you'll probably forget that it was dirty, and then you'll have that extra. Now I'm going to clean my pan a little bit there. I'm going to bring it to my palette though, because I might want that, a green. But then I'm actually going to take that blue, that cerulean blue, and I'm going to put some flowers in. And I'm going to let it blend, and that's just going to give us a nice natural look. There are some blue flowers in my reference photo, and I thought that was pretty. And I thought it would be a great excuse to do that with the same cerulean I've used throughout the painting. I'm not going to do a lot of detail with them, Joe, just kind of blobs. And let the mind figure out what other details should be there. I also want, while it's still wet, I want to put a shadow under there. I'm going to take some of the cerulean blue, some of the ultramarine blue. I'm going to take some burnt sienna. Maybe a little bit more ultramarine blue. And I'm just going to go in just right under the boat, just kind of tap it in, let it blend out. I also maybe add a little bit of that shadow over here too. Okay, another thing that I want to do is add some branches and foliage over here. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I ought to get that in there. And you know what? I think I can do that with this dark I just made. That would work out really well. So why don't I just go in and paint that? Just enough water to make it flow, to make it spread, but because this is fairly opaque, it's not going to be super opaque. And I'm just going to make sure I can see, because I put a pencil line in there. Remember at the beginning I used my little L square? Got that at the Dollar Tree, by the way. It's in the, it's super handy. You find it in the hardware aisle. And actually, somebody just asked me what tape I use. And I use the masking tape, like from the Dollar Tree, because it's a little less sticky. Oh, good grief. I don't know if I can paint a straight line. That is hard for me. You know what? I'm gonna go back to that flat brush. I have a better shot at a straight line with a flat brush. Because it's already kind of straight. And it's already, if you have a little sparkle of white right at the horizon too. Because the water will lap up against the shore and that movement will catch the light. So if you have a little gap, that's fine. Straight lines at the end of the day after I've had coffee and tea is probably not the best way to do it. And that doesn't look straight. I'm going to try from the other side. Oh, guys. Just gotta be straightish. I should have done this before I started to do the ground, because then I could drag my hand right across the painting and not smeared it. I think we're gonna be alright though. I got faith. Boy, I'm moving my arm a lot. That's good enough. Alright, I'm going to fill in a little bit, and then I'm going to grab a smaller brush so I can get a little bit of texture, a little breaking up that ridge. Go back to that same brush I just had. I think it was this one. I want to make sure I get that same color. I'm stirring it up really good on my palette because I want to make sure there's no like water on my brush from rinsing it, and I'm just going to dab. Get some texture in there. If I feel like I'm getting like streaky lines underneath, I can stir that paint up a little bit and break it up with my brush. I don't think there's a huge amount of distance between either sides of the pond here, or the river, or whatever. I guess it doesn't look like a river. It looks pretty still, so maybe it's just like a little pond or stream or something. So I do want to get a little bit of texture in there. Not a lot, just something. You know, I don't want anything too like distracting. We've got our little gray island back there, so we'll leave that alone. I might need to, well, I'm not putting it back in because I've already gone to this layer, so that would just end up looking awkward and weird, so we're not going to do that. But you can see the little line, little gray swoosh. As I'm doing that, I'm like, I'm going to mess that up. There, I just want to get that in before I went and did anything else. Now I can throw in a little flare, a little like kind of a lens flare. Let me just dry my brush off really well. And grab, ooh, that's a lot of red. Grab a little of that, grab some of the yellow. And I can just kind of give it a little bit of a kind of like sunbeaming. Not too much, just a little something to bring that glow. I want to do the boat like a cerulean color. But I'll let the reflections of the sky kind of hit it too. And just kind of sweep in some of that color. Bring in a little ultramarine too. Make it a little earthy. Now for the wooden areas, since I haven't used yellow ochre, I don't really want to bring it in, so I'm going to take the burnt sienna that I've already used, mix it in with that kind of reddish color, and then add some yellow to it. And add some of this greeny mix to tone that down. Add a little blue to that. I'm just basically mixing until the mud is the right color. That looks alright, I think. Let's see, is that light enough? I think so. I'm just going to fill the whole thing in, then I can go in and put the shadows in right over the top. And I should be able to see my lines just fine through there. Remember, if you need to lighten a color, you can use a little white of the paper. Just add water, and then it'll be more translucent, and it'll dilute the color so that the white of the paper shows through, and then you've got that nice light color. I'm just going to try to leave a little sliver. Or maybe I don't even have to. Maybe I can get up close enough. There we go, and that can dry, and then we can go over that. So now I want to do just some little foliage over here. And I just want to brush with a good point. It's a little bit smaller. This is a number 6 round. I'm going to grab the olive. Actually, I think that's about right. I could add a little cerulean to it. Ooh, that's nice. And let's make some lovely little leaves. I always like to pull the strokes towards me. I find it's a little bit easier. And if you need to, you can kind of, well, you might want to get a little stiffer brush, but you could scrub out a little bit of color if you need to. Like if you're going over an area where it's like showing what's underneath it, like you know, if you could see like where the sky and the mountains are, and you don't like that, then you can go in and you can kind of scrub a little bit so that you disturb the paint underneath. And you can practice your leaves. You could pull some towards you, you could drag some away from you and see what you like the best. If you don't get it right in one stroke and you need another stroke, that's fine. I like to vary the colors too, so that it looks a little more natural. I'm going to grab a little bit of the burnt sienna and put some more branches in there. This is dark enough that I don't feel like I need to darken it. You know, there's still enough light in the scene. The sun is high enough that you're still getting enough light in the scene, so everything doesn't have to be a silhouette. But if you want to put the sun lower, you could do all this stuff in silhouette, and that just takes a little bit of the complication of color out of the mix, and that might be more what you like. That if you're a beginner, that might be more of an easier painting. You need a slower speed. So, you know, if that's what you want to do that. Cleaning up that cerulean. I'm going to add some olive too. That's a really pretty olive green. Add it with some cerulean. Look at this gorgeous, like, almost like sap or hooker's green you get. This does have a sap green in it, but I haven't used it yet in this painting, so I really don't want to. Just throwing in a few little plants. Maybe I should go with a smaller brush for this, but I like to use bigger brushes. I like to use bigger brushes because you don't get fussy, but then when you get towards the end of a painting, it's not a bad idea to use a smaller brush because then there's only so much trouble you're going to get yourself into. I want to put a little bush back here because I like how this this boat is just kind of like nestled in this little in like this little grove. Like it's like this little bush is keeping it from rolling off into the water. Making it slightly darker. I feel like the sun is setting as I'm painting this, so I'm going like a little bit darker, you know, because if you've ever tried to paint at sunset, you know, the sun is dipping and everything's getting a lot darker, and it's tough to see what you're painting. It's not. I've never gotten up early enough to paint during sunrise, but in sunrise everything would be getting lighter and brighter, even though it's essentially the same effect. You perceive it differently because, you know, you've been used to the dark, and then you start to see the light. Everything seems so much brighter. I think I want to put some more leaves over there, maybe with a little bit more yellow in them. Okay. If you want to add any ripples in the water, you can do that too. Go back with your flat brush. I'm going to mix, actually use my sponge to clean my palette a little bit. I'm going to use a little ultramarine blue and a little bit of the red. It's okay if it gets some mud off the palette because that will give you that little bit of a more natural, I'll gray it down a little bit. Make sure your paper is dry before you do this though, because you don't want this to feather out. You want crisp little reflections in there. Don't go overboard with it. And I would try to keep any distinct reflections towards the bottom of your paper because that's closer to the viewer. All right, now at this point, if you do want to dry anything, you can. It's not going to be that big of an issue because we haven't really done any granulating effects. It's just like up in the sky where you have those really bright, those really beautiful textures that you want to let that dry naturally and get that effect. As I was thinking about this, I kind of wish I blotted more up here and gotten a little bit more cloudiness, but I think this is pretty, but that's something you might want to experiment with when you're doing yours on your own. I tend to be a little less brave when I'm filming because it's like, well, I don't want to have all this work go to waste if I totally botch it, you know. I don't know if I really want. Well, as I'm painting, as I say that, I'm painting these flowers. I'm like, I don't know if I really want those flowers any bigger, any brighter. But hey, that's what we're doing. Actually, I can lift them a little bit. Just clean my brush, tap them with a damp brush, and I can subdue them a little bit more. That's probably a bit much. Of course, and if I go in with a wet brush on damp paper, I'll get a little bit of a blossom, which actually might help them look a little bit more flower-like. There, I just wanted to do blue on top of the blue to make it a little bit brighter. So I am going to dry this and make sure this is bone dry so that when I go into the shadows on the boat, it won't feather. Another thing I want to do is soften that line right there. So I'm taking a scrubber brush to make sure it's nice and clean. It is. Getting it wet, just blotting off any of the extra, and I'm just going to scrub the edge right there and soften that a little bit. I think I might even add just a smidgen of yellow in there too. Make sure this brush is good and clean. Just a little. There, I think that's gonna look good when it dries, just to kind of get it more of a glow and less of a harsh edge. again, you want to make sure that your sky is dry. And I'm going to blot that center part out so it does get back to white again. There we go. Okay, and then we've got the shadows in the boat to contend with. I'm going to mix ultramarine blue and burnt sienna again for that, because that's a nice dark. And if we don't use it, if we use it wet on dry, but it's not like super wet, we shouldn't get the granulation. We should just get a dark color. So that's how you kind of control your granulation when you don't want it. I want to make sure there's no beads of water on the ferrule, because if that slides down, that's going to make a mess. And I am going to paint that in. Now, I did the opening of the boat a little bit wider than the reference photo, so just be aware of that. If you are like tracing the reference photo or drawing it freehand and you want to draw it a little bit narrower like the photo, absolutely. Just keep that in mind when you are painting. Keep in mind the way you've drawn yours. And we've got a little ridge on the side of the boat. I kind of gently eke my way up towards the edges. I like start in the middle and then like, because it's hard, it would be hard to kind of remove that if I got it too, if I got the shadow too big. So I kind of start in the middle and I work my way out until I get to the size that I need it to be. It's kind of an interesting, kind of an interesting boat. I'm wondering if maybe I should paint, you know what, I think I'm going to paint that part out because it seems like you don't want this part open to sit. That makes more sense to me. You know, sometimes those canoes have like a bar in the center. And sometimes I just don't pay that much attention when I'm sketching. I should pay more attention. Because I'm in such a rush to paint. I want to get to the fun part. And then I think I'll also, with this color, let me get a different brush though. I'm going to add a little shadow under the edging on the outside of the boat. Just go like that. Maybe even add a little bit of distressing on the edge. And this part curves up, so there'd be a little bit of shading, so I want to get that in there too. I'm going to spread it out. And that little sliver of light is bothering me, so I'm just going to go in and fill that in. Now, I'm just seeing if anything needs a little bit of highlight or a little bit of anything. I think I'll take some of this yellow and maybe just give some of these leaves a little boost. Yellows do tend to have a little bit more opacity. This is not listed as an opaque color. I have a feeling it's going to just kind of disappear as it dries, but I should give it a little bit of spark, a little bit of sparkle maybe. All right, and that, my friends, will do it for this painting. Isn't that fun? I think that was fun. It kind of looks like this boat has a little rock. It's like, you know how like you pull the canoe and you kind of lean it back against a rock so it doesn't get, you know, blown back in the pond. That's kind of, I think, what we've got going here. Now, one reason I like to do a final heat of my paper before I remove the tape is because the heat from a hairdryer or a heat tool will loosen the adhesive on the back of the tape. Even though this is Dollar Tree tape, it's not super sticky. I find that it helps, and also, if your paper's not fully dry and you go to remove the tape, you are going to rip it. Even good paper, even like cotton paper. Especially less expensive paper, and especially sketchbook paper, like mixed media sketchbook paper, like I use a lot, or the Arteza watercolor paper. Sketchbooks, those are very fragile when it comes to removing the tape. But boy, I love to take the tape off and see what we have underneath. It's like an instant frame, isn't it? I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up and maybe told a friend or two about it. I would love to have more friends watching these tutorials. If you wanted to, you could throw some birds in the sky. You could have somebody out in the water in a boat fishing. You could really do whatever you like, but I think just as it is too, it's very serene and peaceful and just kind of fun and nice to paint. And I hope you enjoyed painting it with me today, and I enjoyed painting with you. So let's do it again next time. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up before you go. I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, happy crafting.